Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Paw, and I am the managing editor of CBR.com.
And I'm Ben Kendrick, the publisher of ScreenRant.com.
And together, we are The First Rule. This is a podcast where we break the first rule of the internet by going through all of our social media channels and reading the comments for some reason. Join us on our mission.
You have once again,
Yeah.
I'm going to preface it by saying you have once again decided to talk about superhero sex,
Yeah.
basically.
Sexual supercourse. That is correct.
Yes.
We're dining together on this delicious
Mhm.
banquet
Yeah.
of sexual prowess, or super prowess. We had an article go up that said Superman and Lois will never have an affair on the CW series. It was written by our news editor, Evangelia Galanis. We call her Leah. Thank you, Leah. Uh, and the idea of this was basically that Superman will never cheat on Lois because he's just the best dude. Um, Okay, so let's go into the actual meat of this article real quickly. From the article that Leah wrote for us, during DC Fandom's Superman and Lois panel, Superman and Lois showrunner Todd Helbing touched on the character of Lana Lang. He said, quote, I think it's fun when they go back. Lana Lang is there. Lana is Clark's first love, and I think it's an interesting dynamic. Like, as an adult, how you deal with that relationship. It can't be Superman. We don't ever want Clark Kent having an affair on Lois. That's never going to happen. He's as good as they get. So again, best dude. But he goes on to say that while they won't be brawling over him, they will be low key kind of fighting over him somehow, which I'm not a huge fan of. Like, I don't really care. I don't want to see Lois Lane and Lana Lang
Yeah,
fighting
that's
over
like,
each other.
okay, go ahead. And then I'm going to say something about that, I think.
No, go ahead. Say what you want to
Well,
say
no,
now.
I mean, it's just kind of like you're like, oh, he's a good dude, but these catty women,
Hmm.
like, they're going to fight over their man or something. Like, it's just like, that's a weird, it's like kind of passing the buck on the women being like, I don't like catty, right?
Yes.
Like, that's weird. Like, it's like he's too good. He would never do that, but these flawed females would would totally, like, fight over him.
Yeah. That's what I don't like about it. Like, Lana Lang and Lois Lane are both like very, very exceptional people, regardless
Yeah,
of
it's not, this isn't the
anything.
Jersey Shore or something,
Yeah.
right? Like, what is the yeah.
It isn't that like instant failure of the Bechdel test. I don't know. Like, just
Yeah.
if
I
that is
think
their prime motivation, it is
yeah.
Superman. Like, nah, dude. But what I do like about this, or what could happen, or what could be a wrinkle, is that they could rip a plot from Brian Michael Bendis's recent and now ending Superman. It was recently announced that Bendis's run on Superman will be ending, and his adjacent Lois Lane book, wherein the world catches Lois Lane cheating on Clark Kent because they're married with Superman. So there's a picture that someone snaps, I think, of Lois Lane like making out tonsil hockey in the air with Superman, and everyone's like, gasp.
Yeah.
So that could be a cool, fun twist that could allow that whole thing to happen. But real quickly, I don't think Superman's ever cheated on Lois Lane or vice versa. There was some talk of that kind of in the movies and stuff, but I don't think it's ever officially happened. Um, at least not explicitly. But hot damn, there have been some reasons for that woman to leave that dude in their entire run together. I don't know if you've ever heard of or remember Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane. It was from like the late 50s to the early mid 70s, I think.
I think I've
This
seen enough
series.
Screen Rant and CBR lists to know what you're about to talk about, but, like, you
Correct.
should tell our listeners. Yeah.
Yeah, so the grounding in why Lois Lane needs to leave Superman does not need to necessarily go to the fact that he is cheating on her or vice versa. But it's just that he does the scummiest things possible to Lois Lane in this, and it's like kind of the Silver Age, where it's everything from just trying to make her the fool like the entire time to actually prosecuting her for murder, to all like in the guise of teaching her a lesson, which is just the worst. Yeah, indeed, Brian Cronin who's one of our senior writers and
Yeah.
is a well-known and well-respected historian through comics and longtime CBR contributor, wrote something called "The 15 Worst Things Superman Has Ever Done." You can check out there, and similar ones on Screen Rant, which is great. And that's also the book, by the way, where Lois Lane turns herself black to experience racism. So
Right.
that's a thing that happens.
Yep.
What do you think, before I go into the comments, as a story idea, as a narrative plot thread of Lois Lane or Superman cheating on the other as a dynamic in their relationship to explore.
I think it's always tough with comic books and even just like movie franchises and TV franchises. I guess it happens a lot in TV and comics. Is like the idea of just trying to like reinvent the relationships and keep things fresh, right? Like, so I get the temptation to challenge some of the core staples, especially the relationships in his life. Like if you can't challenge Superman other than to kind of like update him for the times, but he's always going to do the like most respectful thing in every situation. I see the temptation to be like, well, what if we pull the rug out from underneath him and, Lois cheats on him or he cheats on Lois or something like that? Because that's such a fractious thing that it would drastically pull the character kind of out of like familiar territory where it's like Clark and Lois have the perfect relationship. They go through their difficulty, but they always are going to find each other. Like I feel like they've done that a lot in like the Spider-Man comics, right? Like he's had more love interest than MJ, even though MJ is kind of considered, I guess sort of the iconic pairing of him. But so I kind of get the temptation to want to mess with it, but I do like the idea that you pitched. I think it's the only way that you could realistically do it is if Lana still harbors feelings for Clark, doesn't know he's Superman, and finds out that Lois had cheated on Clark with Superman or something. That would be an interesting way to get at that because then it wouldn't be like catty women fighting over, the Ubermensch or whatever. It would be like, people who actually care about Clark Kent caught in a situation that is sort of grounded in reality and the lack of knowledge that Lana has over the full picture of the situation. But yeah, I mean, I could see that being good, but it is one of the only ways that I could possibly envision this being anything but kind of like, sort of like a gotcha comic cover or something.
Yeah, that's kind of I think what he's trying to get away from is that even
Yeah.
though as many of the other commenters who I won't go into in this particular case have said like CW shows always rely on that super heavy drama, so it's kind of good that they're not doing it this time. And I guess I do agree with that. I do think that there is something to reinventing maybe Lana's relationship with Clark such that she doesn't know. I mean, she was one of the first ones to find out that he was Superman or whatever. But if you rewrite that a little bit and say, well, maybe she didn't, she's trying to protect her friend or help out in some way, as long as you make it, they were romantically involved, but if you make it kind of more of a platonic relationship between them,
Yeah.
which I think there needs to be more of anyway in this kind of storytelling, I think that
Yeah.
would be interesting. But
Yeah.
I agree, the only way you could really do it.
That's the thing. Like it's like, if you think about like Smallville and the way that they sort of transitioned Clark through the various like love interests that he had, like, falling for Lana, eventually getting with Lana, and then having to transition to Lois, like all of that was clumsy at best, and it was grounded in a CW type melodrama, right? And so it's like you're moving these characters around to keep the show fresh and try and kind of loosely tether it to the mythology. But a lot of it was like a will they, won't they type thing. Otherwise, you would never have put Lana with Lex Luthor for a while, right? That was like very like, TV drama storytelling, basically.
Yeah.
So I like that they're not doing that. I kind of agree, but like, especially because they've sort of established those characters a bit now too. Like, as far as the CW shows are concerned, it's like, you've seen that version of Clark and Lois together, and they're solid. So like, why mess with them on that TV series, right? Like,
Yeah, and we will get to that in a moment because we do have a comment to that effect that I thought is actually a very interesting take on it. The first one that I want to highlight here, and I'm looking at Twitter today as a little separation from Facebook, is from at Rogue Hunter 65 who says, first of all, neither of them would ever cheat on each other, no matter where the story is being told. And then there's like a cocked eye emoji and a very angry emoji. They love each other too much and they are soulmates. And yeah, that's fair. A lot of people think that and they don't want to have that kind of idea of them challenged. But then again, one thing that I do like is that this is taking kind of a different viewpoint of them where they're already married, I think, and they might have a kid. and this is discussing the idea of marriage in a superhero context where one of them is the best superhero of all time and the other one is a probably the best journalist of all time, and they're discussing how this works. Like, these are things that do affect marriages, and however that turns out. I mean, comics too recently has played with the idea of relationships and how they evolve and change, like with Wolverine and Cyclops and Jean Grey being in a polyamorous relationship in the X-Men, where they kind of have uh, intimate relations with each other, and they are kind of all in love with each other, or at least there's that acceptance, which I think is kind of
On the
an interesting
moon, right?
thing.
They're on the
On the
moon
moon.
too. Yeah.
They are on the moon, and they have rooms that don't have doors to connect to all three of each other.
Mhm.
Good for them, man. So we've also got one from at Epic Switzer. Hello, Epic, who writes for our site and some of our sister sites.
Yeah, I was
He
gonna
says,
say, is this a plant? This is a
"Yeah, this is
plant.
a
This isn't
plant.
a real
This is a plant."
commenter. This is like
This is a great, great comment, though. I really like working with him, and this is great. He says, I think Lois cheating would certainly make people upset, but boy, that would be such a fascinating dynamic to explore. I think it would be very interesting and relatable to show how deeply insecure being married to a god would make someone. That's interesting. He follows up by saying, on the other hand, Superman cheating would be dumb. Superman wouldn't cheat on a crossword puzzle. And that is also true. So very good insight there. We also got one from at Eric the Great Seven, who just says, "Did this need a whole article?" Yes, it did. We also have one from, and I love this is one of my favorite ones, at Zerf, who says, "This is something that would never happen," and there's just an aghast possum, which is fun. And then there's a whole thread of stuff that I'm just going to shoot through real quickly. First of all, at Ant Wadley 325 says, "Do they ever in the comic books with a GIF? That's GIF, Greg, of Jeff Goldblum scratching his head trying to think," which is followed up by a at Ofort and Bod, who wrote, "No, but Superman was a proper boy before they got married. A girl in every planet, time zone, under the sea," which was commented on by at Conradical Dummo. God, that's a good name. That he says that time he told Kara, his cousin, Supergirl, that he would bang if it weren't for Kryptonian laws forbidding it. And they go on to discuss this. And yeah, it's that's kind of a thing that happens. They go on in this thread, which I will invite everybody to go see because it gets a little bluer than we need to get here. It just gets
Mhm.
very interesting. But like in Kryptonian society, I don't think they even touched each other, let alone really talked about intimacy or getting intimate or
Yeah.
having those relations. Um, but it's still kind of an interesting dynamic to talk about. It's going to be interesting to see if they talk about it in the end. I think it
I
would add
do
a
I
little
actually
spice.
like the idea of, like, Lois cheating on him in, like, that sense of, because I don't know, I mean, it's crass, right? There's, like, it's that crass thing that people say where it's like, "Show me, the hottest guy in the world or the hottest girl in the world, and I'll show you, like, a girlfriend or a boyfriend who's tired of having sex with them," right? Like, there is kind of that too. It's like, Superman, maybe he's a god, but, like, what does that end up doing to your self-esteem? And also, like, that doesn't mean that you wouldn't get, like, bored. That we saw that kind of in, like, Watchmen with Dr. Manhattan too, right? It's a bit of kind of like the lack of intimacy as a result of sort of the disconnect between being sort of this sort of like all-knowing being and being with, a person who's just a person or something. Like, I could see an interesting story coming out of that.
Yeah,
But that's what I mean. Like, I kind of like being on the side of it where, like, there's something about Superman that causes a problem, not, like, and Superman not being present enough in his relationship or something is more interesting to me than, like, women fighting over him.
yeah,
Like, almost if being with him is a burden is more interesting to me than, like, Superman getting to choose between all the women that want to sleep with him.
yeah. I mean, but that is interesting, and I think you raise a really good point. Like, if it is coming from the other side of just the responsibility of being with somebody that is kind of constantly saving the world in both of their different fields, like Lois Lane and Superman, that is kind of a big deal, and it's almost a conflict of interest. Her being someone who writes the news and he being at the center of most of it is kind of a big deal, right? And I think that's an interesting thing to throw into a marriage that presumably, by the point that we enter into the show, has been going on for a long time. So I think it's kind of cool that they talk about this, and interesting that they're doing it. He said no, but he only said that he wouldn't cheat on her.
Yeah.
So you never know. Maybe Lois will get a little thirsty and go off and do her own thing. Good for her. Good for her. And Superman should be supportive,
Yeah.
I think.
That's it.